welcome everyone, and please do stretch if you need to stand up and stretch your legs or anything like that. Please go ahead. And I'm Aya Ahimsa, and I just moved to Canmore 3 weeks ago, and it's so great. It's great living here. It's great living with Amita. And we forgot to push recording last week, and so I'll just very, very briefly outline what we talked about last week. And we are busy on Tuesday nights. We're going to be working through this book by Shyla Catherine, Beyond Distraction: 5 Practical Ways to Focus the Mind. And Shyla Catherine is a lay teacher, a very deep, proficient meditator. She lives in the South Bay. She often teaches now with Venerable Analayo, if you were familiar with that scholar, monk, also a deep practitioner. So this book is drawing on 2 suttas in the Majjhima Nikaya, the middle length discourses. The first one is Majjhima Nikaya 19, 2 kinds of thoughts. And the second sutta is the very next one in the Majjhima Nikaya 20, the removal of distracting thoughts. So this book, just like she says, practical ways of focusing the mind. This book is all about meditation and ways that we can deepen our meditation. And the most simple, concise definition or description of meditation would be, it's okay for now. Meditation is training the mind. So that, and in the introduction, Shyla Catherine talks about this training of the mind. And the very first step, which I'm thinking that all of us have reached and have had experiences of, is, sitting down, beginning to watch the mind, and then realizing that these are just thoughts. These are thoughts. They're not precise, accurate representation of an external objective reality. They're ideas in my head. And I know for myself, that was so sort of dramatic, shocking, like relieving, and also a real sense of responsibility. Like, oh my gosh, I'm actually responsible for what I think. It's not just random, and it's not just I'm upset because this is a very, very important tenet in Buddhism, to realize that suffering is not because of what's happened to me today or what happened to me in childhood. Or, these are all conditions that affect me, but really suffering arises inside of here. So the solution to suffering arises inside of here. We're not victims. So that's like the first step. And then the second step is what we will really dive into tonight, which is that first sutta, 2 kinds of thoughts. The second aspect of the training is to begin to be able to discern what thoughts am I having that are constructive and they're helpful and they're beautiful and they're worth having, and what thoughts am I having that are they're contracted and they're harmful, they're toxic, they're obsessive, they're hurting. And this is what the Buddha did. And that's what this sutta, 2 kinds of thoughts, describes. It describes the Buddha on his quest for enlightenment. So he that this is one of the first steps, is that he starts to divide his thoughts into these two categories. And the Pali words are kusala and akusala. So kusala is pure or wholesome or helpful, and then a in Pali is a negation. So akusala is not beautiful, not helpful, not wholesome, not skillful. There are lots of different translations that are done of those words. And I think it's important for us to find ones that work for us. You know, sometimes you'll read it's good and evil, and sometimes that can be very heavy and loaded for people that have been brought up in a Christian culture with this idea of sin. So sometimes it's wholesome, unwholesome. Sometimes it's profitable, unprofitable, helpful, harmful, skillful, unskillful, beneficial, harmful, whatever word really works for you. So this is such an important stage in our cultivation on our spiritual path, and it stays with us all the way to the end, that we really begin to think about our thoughts in this way, and discern what I'm thinking, and not just be caught in a story, caught in a repetitive habit, caught in obsessive thinking. So the Buddha says that the kusala thoughts, are actually, the Buddha always starts in the suttas, the bad news, and ends with the good news. A master psychologist. So we'll start with akusala. The Buddha's sitting, watching his own mind and realizing sometimes there were thoughts. This is before he's the Buddha. He's the Bodhisattva. He's training his mind like we are. He realizes sometimes there were thoughts of sense desire, sensual desire. And he saw that those thoughts, so he realized those are the thoughts. So you realize that the content of the thought. And then he watched. He watched his body, he watched his mind state, watched his heart. What happens when these are the thoughts in the mind? And he saw that it didn't lead to his own welfare. It didn't lead to the welfare of other. It didn't lead to the welfare of both. And that it wasn't forward leading, and it wasn't leading to freedom, it wasn't leading to emancipation. So then he also realized at times there were thoughts that were of ill will. And those thoughts, again, he watched the ripple out effect in the body and in the mind and heart, and realized these thoughts also are not for my own benefit, they're not for the benefit of others, they're not for the benefit of both. And then he also saw there were times that there were thoughts of cruelty. And again, he observed, and this also is not leading to my own well-being, not my own welfare, not the welfare of others, and not the welfare of both. So these were the three broader categories that he realized. These kinds of thoughts were akusala, unwholesome, unbeneficial, and it was because it didn't uplift the mind. He didn't feel well when he had those thoughts. And then the sutta is very powerful. The Buddha says something very, very important that is it's very important, and it has huge repercussions for us training our minds. As he had these thoughts, then the next thing that happens in the Sutta. He says, whatever one frequently thinks and ponders upon, that will become the inclination of the mind. Whatever one thinks and ponders about frequently, that becomes the inclination of the mind. And you can actually even see it can even become the inclination of the wrinkles on your face, the posture of your body. It has an imprint, it has an impact. It's very motivating to not have unwholesome thoughts. The modern science, neuroscience, and psychology knows this now. When we have anger flare up, the residual in the nervous system is hours. There's an effect. There's an imprint. There's an incredible book. The body keeps score. I have a postcard in my kuti. It was Martha Graham, actually, the wonderful dancer. But the body never lies. So it's a wonderful thing for us to understand as meditators. Sometimes we can get fooled by our mind, but your body is telling you if you're anxious, if you're tense, if you have ill will. Sometimes we can suppress and not realize, oh, I'm actually feeling very ungenerous right now. I was in a conversation yesterday on Zoom and heard about someone did such and such and such and such, and I could feel for me also, my lips get tight, my heart got tight, and it was sad, it was sad for me. It's like, wow, I just feel so ungenerous right now, so unpleasant, but important. I can't just say something nice and fake. I had to think, why is that? Why is it so ungenerous? And invariably, when we're judgmental, ungenerous, and when that's going out, I'm very motivated to look at that, because I know I'm doing that to myself. There are many times I'm very ungenerous going in, unkind, harsh judgment, a standard that's not realistic. So then the Buddha, the opposite. He saw when there were thoughts of renunciation, which is the opposite of sense desire, that the heart would sing and there would be calm and peace and harmony. It was for his own welfare, for the welfare of others, for the welfare of both. And then he saw when there was non-ill will, same, which is very well, smooth and calm and settled, relaxed, open, for his own welfare, for the welfare of others, for the welfare of both. And when there was non-cruelty, such a lovely feeling. You don't wish ill on anyone. You don't wish ill for an ant. You just wish for people to be well. It's sort of what we say when we say Merry Christmas, season greetings, like I wish you well, Happy New Year. I'm wishing you well. It might not be like that, but that's what I wish. That would be the wish. Non-cruelty. For his own welfare, for the welfare of others, for the welfare of both. And that is a theme throughout the suttas. This idea of for my own welfare, for the welfare of others, for the welfare of both. You really can't separate it out. It's not selfish to do everything that we can to train our mind and to have more peace of mind and more happiness and contentment in our lives. This is not a selfish thing. It has an effect. You know it at work when you're well, when you're calm, when you're generous. It's so beautiful. Even when you're in a store and you interact with the clerk and you're genuinely content, it's a lovely interaction versus, on your phone and you're distracted and you cross something and then it's very different connection with that human being. So important for us to be training our minds in these three areas: renunciation, non-ill will, non-cruelty. And this really is the second factor of the eightfold noble path. This is right intention. So these are themes that are central to what the Buddha is teaching us about our own welfare and about our minds. And so we can check this out, when we're meditating, and these are the areas that are hindrances to our meditation: this sense desire, ill will, cruelty. And so if you're meditating and the mind is becoming distracted, we talked about this last week, trying to really know what's going on in the mind. If it's distracted and it's sense desire, this will manifest in thoughts like replaying a scene from a movie or a TV show, or from a book we read, or planning a conversation. This is actually a sense desire, or getting excited about, meeting my friend later, going skiing, or when all of these things are sense desires, and they're blocks to the mind calming down, getting stiller, and peace and clear seeing. They're agitating. So I'm giving you the answer. That's the thing to look at when these things run through the mind. Check out the body. Check out, is this for my own welfare? Just see how you are. What is this producing in my life? So sense desire is not, let me say this, pleasant sense contact, no problem. It's with, because this is part of life. We live, you walk out the door, I'm still on the, like, Sanghamitra, look at that. It's just, I read to people, I feel like I'm living in a postcard. It's really, yeah. We drove to Calgary and I was just like, it's very incredible. But this is not a problem. Pleasant sense contact is part of life. Thank goodness, really. It's the sense desire. It's the pursuit of it, the obsession of it, the planning it, the trying to keep it, it's all that tangle is the hindrance to meditation. Meditation itself, once it's really starting to unfold, becomes incredibly pleasant. So the pleasant contact is not the issue. It's all of the misunderstanding and the craving that goes with it. It's very important to understand that, that sometimes people will pick up the teachings, and I know of stories where it'll be a beautiful sunset and someone in rows will like deliberately turn away. No, this is not. No, we're opening to reality, the good, the bad, and the good. So it is the sense desire is the thing that's really the block, the issue, and the distraction. pleasant contact in itself is not a distract, especially in meditation. If you're relaxed and the body is calm and it's not restless, um, and it's pleasant, it's easier for the mind to stay with the meditation object. In fact, it's very, very important that the meditation object that we have is a pleasant experience, not just neutral. There's actually pleasantness to it. And that can be a stage in meditation where you're trying to develop a pleasant relationship with that meditation. If it's the breath, you want to be thinking of ways to relate to the breath that are pleasant. They're happy. One of the greatest antidotes to all of these blocks in meditation, all of these hindrances, is contentment. And I know that Sanghamita's talked about that. It's a very important part of the gradual training. And it's the thing that we can be doing that can actively cultivate more and more wholesome mind states, is to be cultivating contentment and playing with it and thinking of ways to have it be genuine, not just the power of positive thinking or look on the bright side or glass half full. No, like genuine contentment of things that make you feel okay. Life's okay. We've got enough. It's good. Ajahn Sona said the most amazing thing one time in a tea time. He was talking about sense, desire, craving, greed. He said this sentence, and I thought about it probably for a month. He goes, greed is lack. When we're craving, there's some kind of lack. There's something that we are perceiving that we're lacking. And that's a place to investigate. Greed is lack. And this is why contentment is such a powerful antidote. A book came out almost 20 years ago now by an American psychologist, Barry Schwartz, and it's called The Paradox of Choice. And he actually has a TED Talk about it. And not Buddhist at all, but so much truth that resonates with what the Buddhists taught us in what he says. And this book came about, The Paradox of Choice. It's at the very beginning of the book. His tenet in this book is that Americans, this is in 2004, still very much applies. Americans were, the most affluent society in the world and had the most freedom and the most choice. And that there's this assumption that choice equals freedom. I have autonomy, I get to pick, I've got freedom. And he was proposing that there was so much choice now in American life that it was a tyranny. They were under the tyranny of choice, this paradox of choice. And this came about because he walked into the Gap store, and probably year 1999 or 2000, something like this, and he goes, yeah, I'd really like to get a pair of jeans. And they're like, oh, what kind of jeans do you want? He goes, well, like jeans, like the ones I'm wearing, jeans. And they got, no, like, do you want boot cut? Do you want straight leg? Do you want acid wash? Do you want low rise? Do you want... He just starts listing all these things. And Barry Schwartz says what happened for him, and it's like he's not Buddhist. I don't know that he's a meditator, but anyway, he certainly was watching his mind. That what happened, first of all, he felt, burden. He just wanted to buy jeans, but then he got hooked in like, oh, all these choices. Like, and he said very quickly it went to like, I could get the perfect pair of jeans. Like his expectations just went way up. And then he had all this burden of making these choices and he tries to figure it out. So then he felt all this pressure to get it right, and then he gets the jeans and he's totally disappointed and he's suffering. This is how this book came about, because then he started like really looking at this in his life, and it, like, you go into the stories, like there's 175 different salad dressings. So you're going to get like the perfect one, right? So the Buddha is teaching us contentment, a pathway towards contentment is fewness of wishes. Like we don't want to ramp up our choices and our desires, the perfect cup of coffee. You go into Starbucks and there's about 7 things you have to decide about your coffee, it just, and very short, there's research, like all of these decisions are actually a cognitive load. They're actually adding stress in our lives. Even the word decide, actually the root comes from like homicide, suicide. There's a death in decide. When I decide this, all the other options die. And this, we're not aware of this. It's not really in our consciousness, but we actually are feeling the effects. And we live in this culture that is like going exactly the opposite way of what the Buddha is instructing in terms of going towards happiness. More choice is actually more burden, it's more expectation, it's more disappointment, it's more pressure, and we feel it. In the workplace, it used to be you could go to work and then you could go home, but now people can get a hold of you, and so they're like all of these things are they're flowing in to our energy field and our peace of mind. So fewness of wishes is really linked to contentment. And I remember this person taking, I was traveling somewhere with a senior nun who was going to be teaching. And so we're en route, we're in a city and a supporter, a Buddhist supporter came to offer us a meal and took us out to this, I think it was a sandwich bar or whatever. And we were just both so happy, because we never get sandwiches. And we got bags of chips, and it was just, and he was like, this is why I love, feeding monastics, because whatever, it is. It's such a beautiful life, because you're just living off the generosity of other people. And so every time you eat, there's this amazing reflection on people's goodness and their generosity. But even as a non-monastic, you can simplify your life, take out unnecessary choices, make your wardrobe simple, make your social life simple, make your diet simple. These all the fewness of wishes, that you will be surprised at the increased satisfaction and ease and contentment. Very, very important, and such a great counter to sense desire. That these things they just will not. They're shiny, and they go woo, and they never deliver the goods that they're promising. So important that we are constantly checking that out. The expectations that happen for us, and then what does deliver the goods is training our minds and wholesome, cultivating the wholesome. This second factor of the Eightfold Noble Path, renunciation to counter sense, desire, and craving, non-ill will, non-cruelty. And I remember when I first came in contact with the Buddha's teachings, I didn't really understand that. And I remember asking Ajahn Sona about it. Non-ill will. I would think that, metta would be the counter for ill will. But I think the reality is, the Buddha just knows, he knows samsara, he knows it, the mind, and non-ill will it's the gateway. There is a hindrance there, and hindrance is ill will. And when the non-ill will, when the hindrance is removed, everything opens, everything unfolds. We just need to be removing these hindrances. I saw that, this became so real to me. It was, I had this amazing privilege of being with my father as he died. And he was, sitting in a chair in his home, and he had lived, long, and he was ready to go. It's such a beautiful, peaceful experience, and my sister was there and my mother was there, and it was such a beautiful gift that my father gave to my mother, because right after he died, like maybe the first or second thing she said, she's like, well, that wasn't so bad. And she's like, I wonder how I'm gonna die. It was just like this, so the biggest gift, seriously. But there were so many gifts in that process. And my father had been an alcoholic his whole life, like half hour before he died, we're taking a glass of wine out of his hand. And my mother had, a lot of the things that someone has, that is the partner of someone with an alcoholic, a lot of anger, a lot of resentment. Why? He died, and somehow it died with him. It just left that day. Like he left, and all of the unmet needs and all of the frustration and the anger and the waiting for it to be different died too. It's just the way it happened. But I saw non-ill will. Like it was so strong. It was so strong that my sister and I left. We were there for hours, and then we left together. And in my memory, probably this isn't how it happened, but it's how I remember it. We closed the door to their apartment, and we looked at each other and was like, who is that woman? Who's that woman? And I'm not joking. I mean, the grandchildren, they're all young adults, and my sister and my brother and I were like, there was new mom and old mom. And every so often, new mom would slide into old mom, so, and we would be talking like that. Oh yeah, saw mom, and there was a little bit of old mom, because some anger would come back about something else. But it was just dramatic. The non-ill will, the ill will left, and then the heart opened, and there was so much beauty just from non-ill will. So it's exactly what the Buddha said. It's, renunciation, non-ill will, non-cruelty. Good enough. That's our job. Take out the hindrance. The rest, just, it's the nature of the mind. So that's I mean, this is how the Buddha got to enlightenment, but this is what we'll be doing this week. Watching the mind when there's kusala, and beautiful. When there's akusala, do what we can to care for it, see if there is a lack, and try to be developing content. So, I think that, yeah, I mean, there's so much. If you have the book, it's great to read. Yeah, and I'll just end with the Buddha's words. Abandon what is unwholesome and devote yourself to wholesome states, for that is how you will come to growth, increase, and fulfillment. So we're going to do what the Buddha did. It might take a little while, but I'll end there. And if anyone has any questions or comments, observations, things that happened for them as they watched their mind last week, anything, I'll just open it up.
I was just thinking how social media and the internet takes us away also from our, the mind states that we would like to have. Just for a small example, my wife tasked me with finding a movie on Christmas Eve that the family can watch. So you go to Netflix and there's like 5,000 choices. You're trying to get it right. And then you pick the movie, finally, the stress of doing that. And then when you watch the movie, it's the complete letdown, and the content, kind of ruins the whole thing. So just what you were saying earlier about when he went into the clothing store and looking for the jeans, kind of the same thing going on there.
Yeah. Thanks, Scott. Yeah, a great example. And yeah, the internet and the internet is designed to keep us on it. Yeah. Thanks, Scott. And the other Scott.
I just wanted to say that this tyranny of choice idea really resonated with me. And the Netflix example is a good one. I have another example from a friend of mine that moved from India to Canada a number of years ago. And she is a prof at the U of C. And when she showed up, she went to the grocery store for the first time, and she got to the cheese section and she looked at a wall of cheese.
Yeah.
And how many choices there were, and she started crying. That's how it affected her. It's like, how can we live in a world of so many choices? It was a moment for her. And then the other thing I wanted to say was more of a question, and I know we're probably going to get into this in the upcoming weeks, but how do we, when we recognize a thought that is not wholesome, how do we kind of first analyze it and then get it out of our heads so that we're not ruminating about it? And I know that's a huge question, but it's one that I have almost every day.
That's a brilliant question, and that's what this whole book is about. Yeah. But I will say something that is fresh that I had not heard before. And again, Sanghamitra, this is something that came up in the Austin retreat with Beth Upton that didn't really come up so explicitly in the retreat that we did together in Quebec. But Scott, I love what Beth was saying, that I mean the two things that we really struggle with the most are sensual desire, sense craving, and ill will, aversion, so it's the wanting this and the not wanting that. These are the two movements of the mind, movements of the heart that we pretty much, unless we've trained our mind, from morning to night, we just that's what's happening. So Beth said this, that craving, it's really linked to that Ajahn Sona, greed is lack. She said craving invariably is coming up because there is some need, some unmet need. So the very first thing, you've got this unwholesome thought, is to kind of figure out, is this kind of in the craving camp or in the aversion camp? If it's in the craving camp, then you can start to investigate, is there something like some unmet need? And be looking there, because when the career I was in right before I ordained was as a speech language pathologist, and I worked with children with special needs that were learning very differently, developing very differently, and many of them would be not have full use of language, and not, and they were young also. But so we was drilled into our training, ABC. All behavior is communication. So even with our own heart and mind, when cravings coming up, something's there. There is something that's not content, and so you can try and investigate that. And if it's in the aversion camp, probably their aversion often has some kind of, it's this, right? It has some kind of protective function. So lots of times for me, growing up with a father as an alcoholic, like the boundaries in our house, my family of origin, they didn't exist. And so, and I'm a woman, I've got that female conditioning. So having very clean, clear boundaries of what I can do and can't do, and what's okay and what's not okay, is pretty undeveloped, weak for me. So a lot of my ill will comes up when I haven't had a clear boundary, and then someone's come in a way that I'm feeling, and then ill will comes up. So for my own life, I really see that when there's aversion, it has a protective function. So something's happening, that you're feeling crowded or taken advantage, violated in some way. So that's another. So those aren't in the book, but I found those psychologically, I found those very useful and helped me get past this, I can't believe I'm like this, or I can't believe I'm thinking that again. Sometimes there can be that, but it gave me a way forward. And then the whole book is about what you're asking. You'll choke up. Thinking about my ill will. Yeah. But I really appreciate people talking about this tyranny of choice. I do think as practitioners, it's a area that we can look at, ways to simplify our lives with understanding the spiritual part of that, very, very loving and not the messages that we're getting anywhere else in the media, from other people's conversations, oh, what are you doing? What are you getting? What are you, what are you learning? Yeah, and the Buddha talks about it's an incredible gift if you're around people that will talk about contentment and having fewness of wishes. So it's something we can talk about as a community in ways that we're simplifying our lives.
Oh, okay. I think we're on the 5th Tuesday, aren't we?
27. I can look.
Yes. Maybe 4.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, okay. Equanimity.
Yeah, equanimity. So good.
Okay, so we'll end with the Brahma Vihara of Upekkha, equanimity. So if you'd like to bring to mind a neutral person, somebody you don't have strong feelings of love or hate towards, and send these phrases to them. You are the owner of your karma. Your happiness and unhappiness depend upon your actions, not upon my wishes for you. I care for you as a suffering human being, but I cannot keep you from suffering. I wish you true happiness, but I cannot make your choices for you. Now bring to mind somebody who's been very supportive of you and send the phrases to them. You are the owner of your karma. Your happiness and unhappiness depend upon your actions, not upon my wishes for you. I care for you, the suffering human being, but I cannot keep you from suffering. I wish you true happiness, but I cannot make your choices for you. Now think of a friend. The previous person was a friend. Just bring to mind another friend and send the phrases to them. You are the owner of your karma. Your happiness and unhappiness depend upon your actions, not upon my wishes for you. I care for you as a suffering human being, but I cannot keep you from suffering. I wish you true happiness, but I cannot make your choices for you. Now bring to mind somebody that you have a difficult relationship with and send the phrases to them. You are the owner of your karma. Your happiness and unhappiness depend upon your actions, not upon my wishes for you. I care for you too as a suffering human being, but I cannot keep you from suffering. I wish you too true happiness, but I cannot make your choices for you. And now we send the phrases to ourselves. I am the owner of my karma. My happiness and unhappiness depend on my actions, not my wishes or hopes. I care for myself, and I am determined to follow the path of peace, the Noble Eightfold Path. I wish myself happiness, and I am determined to make skillful choices. all beings are owners of their karma. The happiness and unhappiness of all beings depend upon their actions, not upon my wishes for them. I care for all beings, suffering beings, but I cannot keep them from suffering. I wish all beings true happiness, but I cannot make their choices for them. May the merit of our practice be shared with all sentient beings, named and unnamed. Blair, Louise, Tim, others.
Eric, Paul, Ruth,
May all beings be well and happy. Thank you, everyone. Check your emails. I sent out the notice about the fundraiser that Save On is offering us. So if you'd like to support us in that, think about getting some grocery cards from us by the 5th of January. Thank you.
Thanks, Sangamita. Thanks, Aya.
of course. You all.
Thank
you.
got-
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Night.
Thanks very much.
Night.